Welcome, dear viewers, to a new episode of Dialogue Horizon. In this episode, definitely we are going to cover a very important event in the history of Sudan. Today, the 1st of January 2021, is the 65th anniversary of the independence of Sudan from the condominium rule. Condominium by the English and the Egyptian rulers since 1899 till 1956, when Sudan was granted after a struggle, real struggle of different generations, who most of them are now they passed, they are no longer with us. But we take this chance and this opportunity to commend and appreciate their efforts, which resulted in the independence. It was a real struggle against the colonization for 56 or 57 years, culminated on the 1st of January 1956 by the celebration of the independence of Sudan, which was announced and recognized by the condominium two countries, the English, the Egyptian, and the third country in the world which recognized the independence of Sudan was America. So I'm very happy to have and to host in this episode, in this important event of Sudan, His Excellency Ambassador Osman Dirar. Osman Dirar was ambassador of Sudan for in different parts of the world, Arab world and African, and he worked quite a long time in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and he contributed a lot in the foreign policies of the country in a long period. Also, we are glad to host our friend Dr. Zuhair Bashar. Zuhair is, originally he is a political analyst and he studied political science, and he is specialized on conflict resolutions. And so we have a lot of conflicts. We had and we still have a lot of conflicts in Sudan. So we'll be happy to host you and to have your views in the different aspects. Okay, we'll start with our dialogue and question by His Excellency Ambassador Osman Dirar. Ambassador Osman Dirar, first, we want to give the viewers an insight about the reasons, the main reasons behind the colonization itself. Why did the Egyptian and British rulers came to Sudan in 1998 in the famous campaign war by in Kerry? It was a battle, historic battle in Kerry. After that, immediately after that, after the rule of the Mahdiya. Mahdiya ruled Sudan since 1885 to 1898, after the Kerry defeat of the Ansars and the Mahdiya soldiers. Since that time, the Sudan was under the condominium rule of the British and American. Why? What was the reason behind this occupation of Sudan for this long time?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Well, first let me start by thanking you for having me on this program. And as for the important question which you raised, I think we have to keep in mind the fact that this foreign occupation, they call it the reconquest.
Reconquest.
Yes. And that was the time of the scramble for Africa.
Okay.
After the Berlin Conference in 1885, there was this general rush of the colonial forces in Europe to get what they call the spheres of influence in Africa, to occupy certain parts of Africa. Actually, they divided up the continent among themselves. This was one factor which we need to keep in mind. Then, from the point of view of the Egyptian regime at that time, they consider that Sudan was part of their belongings, part of their
Part of the empire.
empire. This is why they called it the Reconquest.
Reconquest.
Al Fatih.
Okay.
The British, of course, at that time, the British colonial empire was part of the European colonial powers looking for spheres of influence. But we cannot forget the fact that there were economic and commercial factors involved.
Okay.
This was became clearer later on, after the occupation, how they started to exploit the economic potential of the country. And this happened in many parts of Africa. But we also need to keep in mind the difficult internal situation of Sudan at that time. That was a situation which was inviting for foreign interference, foreign occupation and the reconquest. At that time, the country was very, very unstable. It was in a state of constant war since the killing of General Gordon and the start of the Mahdist state. The Mahdist state could not maintain peace and stability in the country. And this was very inviting to the foreign powers.
And it witnessed also a lot of atrocities and
Yes.
against humanity and
There was
according to history.
there was a lot of violence and bloodshed.
Bloodshed, yeah.
And many parts of the country were unstable. There was then the government. Actually, the Mahdist state was in a constant state of war.
State of war, yes.
Inside the Sudan, and they tried to go outside the Sudan. They sent
neighboring, some of the neighboring
to conquer Egypt. They had several wars with more than one conflict.
So all this also okay. Now you said something that because the colonization, these countries they divided the African, the virgin actual resources of Africa. But do you think that it was triggered by the killing of Gordon? Had it to do with
well,
it?
in the mind of many in Britain, they thought it was important for them to avenge the killing of Gordon. But there were other factors which were more important
than the killing. Even without the killing of Gordon, they could have.
Even without the question of Gordon having been killed, they had their plans to reconquer the country.
Okay, Dr. His Excellency Ambassador Osman Dirar. Okay, we go to our friend in the conflicts. People, they said, although after 65 years of independence and the national rule, some people they consider that the independence was not entirely nationalistic in its some of the personal aspirations of the leader at that time. That is why maybe it did not continue. Sudan did not continue as it's supposed to do. So do you think, because we still had a lot of conflicts immediately after independence, it started by the South, and we have a lot of conflicts. So why the country did not stabilize till now, and conflicts just happened after the independence?
Thank you, Engineer Ahmad. Thank you for inviting me to this session. And I would like to send my congratulations for the 65th anniversary of independence for all the Sudanese people, and particularly for those who are watching us right now in this program. And I'm pleased to be here with Ambassador Osman. Yeah. So going back to your question, it's a very interesting question. Very interesting question, because the conflict actually started in 1955, a year before independence, and that was by the rebellions in southern Sudan. Turid incident, and it continues since then. Why? Surprisingly, if you look to the issues we are facing right now, it was the same issues that Sudanese were facing immediately after independence. What were the issues? The issue of peace and conflict, the issue of national unity, the issue of identity, the issue of federalism, whether the country is to be centralized country or to be divided into regions, federal country. All these issues were present at that time. And unfortunately, the reason why these issues perpetuated and continues up to now, because they haven't been addressed. They haven't been addressed. First, the issue of national unity. When, let's go back, when the Sudan was created, the modern Sudan, it was created on the will and the interest of the colonials. They designed the country in that way. They shape the institutions and the structures and the relationships, whether inside or with the external, based on that interest of the colonials. So when independence took place, the people of Sudan have to sit down and to look into whether this country, according to this kind of shaping and structures, is going to fit the national unity? Is it going to fit the nation building requirements? These two questions, I think, have been raised by many scholars, but haven't been listened to or addressed by politicians. That's why we continue to fall in the trap of conflicts since then up to now. And I can elaborate more and give some examples later on.
Yes, when we come to the, we'll discuss in detail.
Sure.
In detail when we come down the episode, we'll have, because it's very interesting, because the era of Sudan since independence to till now, it witnessed three military coups, whereas the colonization, when the British, when they left Sudan on the parliament system democracy, like in England, but it didn't work. It didn't work. If you go, you have very short time of civilian rule followed by coup or revolution. So that's why we will come, because of the conflicts. Still conflicts until this moment. Conflicts are still there. So we'll cover this in depth. We go back to our friend Ambassador, His Excellency Ambassador Osman Dirar. What do you think? Can you just give us your views about the challenges which faced Sudan, or will face Sudan, or is still facing Sudan immediately after independence? There are a lot of challenges, like to maintain, as we all know, that the British left the country with the best civil service. The best civil service. This is one of the challenges, how to maintain, how to sustain this. I think it did not work, or people did not pay attention to it. So what are, in your mind, in your view, what are the challenges to the Sudanese, to the nationals, in developing the country in the after the era after independence?
I think one of the main points to be considered in this respect is the fact that although the institutions left by the colonial regime, like the civil service, the educational system, the health system, they were not able to withstand the challenge of nation building. I think this is why I think we have to put the matter in a broader perspective. It is not enough to have a good civil service for to build a nation, to build a mother nation. Yeah. There were more basic challenges which go far beyond the existence of the state apparatus.
Yeah.
You have to build a nation, you have to build a modern state with all institutions. The first and the basic condition for that is to have national unity in the country. If you don't have that, if you don't have national unity, if you don't have political stability in the country, I don't imagine that you can develop an efficient civil service or a good economic system, or to face the challenges of development.
Yes, yes.
First of all, you have to make the basic political conditions of national unity and of the resolve to build nation, a modern nation.
Yeah.
The question of nation building did not face Sudan alone. It faced many countries, but all the countries that were newly independent. And I think that was our main problem. If you can blame our leaders immediately after independence for one thing, I think the main thing which you could blame them for was that they did not focus strongly enough on the question of nation building.
Nation building. That's very important.
That's the main challenge.
Yeah.
This is why we had the problems. This is why up to now we don't have a permanent constitution.
Yes.
This is why we have we are in a very difficult situation regarding the question of development. This is why we have so many conflicts in the country. As my friend said, all these were basic questions which were not resolved. The question of conflict inside the country. If you have a series of conflicts in the country, it's difficult to see how we can build a nation.
Yeah. That's why that's logical. I think what he said. You agree with him because you mentioned in your words. We talk about unity. One of the main issues now is Excellency the Ambassador saying that one of the challenges which the regimes governed, they failed to maintain or to establish a unity based on the identity. Till this moment, they did not resolve the question of identity of Sudan, Arab, African, like this. So this caused a lot of conflict, and this conflict definitely crippled the growth, the economic growth. Now definitely the economy is in a bad, is worse than when the rule, the colonization, when they left Sudan. Things are worsening, and we are on the verge of a collapse, actually, which is a catastrophe if it comes. Some people, they say, Dr. Zuhair, they see that the British and mainly the British, actually the colonization, they call it the condominium, but it was primarily under the British rule.
Yes.
The Egyptians did not have any role in the rule of Sudan. Many people, they think that the British, they set some models, they set some systems, as you said, according to their views and according to their aspiration and according to their what they want from the country later. That's why it's not necessary that they put the most important thing. Do you agree to the fact that the British, they did something good, or they did something which resulted in this conflict which you
This is a very, thank you, but this is a very difficult question to answer yes or not. Because in terms of having done something good, if you look to the civil servant and you look to the military and police, these modern institutions, in some way you would say this is a good thing. But on the other way, as I said, they did this good thing for their own benefits. Look to the military. They form a military that serves their own interests from minority groups to grasp the power. At the same time, they divided the country into blocks. For example, the South, and then they introduced the policy of restrictions and closed areas. So people from southern Sudan cannot come to the north cannot go to the south. Even in Darfur, they have applied a different, in Darfur and the east, they have applied another policy, which is the two parallel administration. Civil administration for the urban centers and Khartoum, and then native administration for what they call the native. As if the natives are less civilians and less installed than the people who are living in the urban centers. So that gives a perception that it is the British colonial that created and embodied these problems, because they have divided people into groups, And then from these people, they selected those who can serve their interests and put them in this, whether in the civil servant or in the military or in the security. The other thing is, according to their interests, they divided the country into areas, and then they promote some areas, not because they love these people or this group of people, because this confine and goes very well with their interests. For example, when they develop the north and put the railways, establish the railways and the airports and all these things. Look to the Port Sudan. When they develop the Port Sudan, they develop it to export the commodities.
Yeah.
If you go to the central Khartoum, why they create a central administration in Khartoum? Because they want to control all the regions, bring them to Khartoum and control the resources. So if you go to say immediately they have done good thing, you will be fallen on the trap, like to say that to praise colonials. But at the same time, yes, these good things, but the good things were done for the purpose of the colonials, not for the purpose of the country. And I'm saying this because if you look to the south, why they were why the rebellion erupted in 1955? Because they were of a perception that the colonials are going to go and leave them annexed to Khartoum without any terms. There is no agreement. The same thing, therefore, was a separate sultanate, independent sultanate. It was annexed to central government in Khartoum without any terms. The same thing for the Eastern Sudan. Same thing for the far north. It used to be separate independent states. You know that historically. The Sinar and these areas also historically used to be separate states. So it was the colonial that bring all this together and brought them to be administered from Khartoum. After the colonials left, the Sudanese have to sit together and decide on what terms we are going to continue this central government. That didn't happen. The elites in Khartoum decided that this state, the way it was formed, should continue with its limited structures, with its limited relations, with its limited development, with the uneven development across the country. There is uneven development. It's unbalanced.
Yeah.
It was the colonials that are responsible of this unbalance. But after independence, the Sudanese nationals have to take this into account, and they have to look for a solution for this situation. But that didn't happen as well. So that's what makes us to be in this position up to now.
That's very good,
Yeah.
Dr. Zuhair. I think His Excellency the Ambassador would like to add something to what he said, because he mentioned two important things. First is the identity. The colonization left the Sudan without fixing or without resolving the question of identity. Till this moment, people are talking about the identity of Sudan. As you know, Sudan is divided in different ethnicities, and so the identity of Sudan is. I remember late John Garang, he said, why we talk about Africanism or Arabism? Let us say Sudan. He said that. He was very shrewd, as you know, Dr. John Garang. He said, let us say Sudan. We don't have to go back to be Arab or Africa. So what can you add to this crippling, as something crippling to the development of the country? One of the issues, the identity and the marginalization. What he was saying, that the colonization, the British rule, they left Sudan with embedded time bombs. It started, but Sudanese nationals, the elites and the leaders, they did not pay attention to these bombs, and did not where to defuse the time bomb. So what can you add, Your Excellency, Ambassador? So this is a very important issue. Till now we are suffering from this issue of marginalization and identity and structure, how to rule the country.
What can be said in this respect? I agree with what my friend
Zuhair.
Dr. Zuhair said, but whatever the British did in Sudan, it was basically for their own interest.
Yes.
It wasn't for the interest of the Sudanese people. This is why, in their mind, it was very important to administer Sudan, as they say, on the cheap. They did not invest very much in the administration. They had a very small administrative corps. They selected the best elements from Oxford and Cambridge to come to serve in the civil administration in the Sudan.
Yes.
And they tried not to create a modern state system, modern administration. They relied on the leaders of the native administration to administer the country for them.
Yeah.
This was very basic in their thinking. So in their mind, there was no priority for the question of creating a modern state machinery.
Yeah.
They just wanted, it was just like having a police state to maintain law and order, and to create a basic system of administration which does not cost them very much. After independence, we failed to develop this. We failed to create a modern state system. And the question of identity is related to this, because when you consider the conflicts which arose after independence, they were related to the question of the way to administer the country, to govern the country, to rule the country, to develop the country. All these are issues related to the question of identity, because people had aspirations, and then suddenly they felt that there wasn't the kind of even-handed management of the affairs of the countries. Actually, one of the problems we need to consider is this fact: many people in the Sudan didn't know the South very well. Yeah. It was a kind of surprise when the meeting started in Tunis in 1955. Many people they might not even have heard about the South. So this is where there was a problem in the thinking of our leadership. The educational system was not designed to create a united national outlook, national spirit.
Yes.
This was a major drawback.
Yeah. They could have changed the education system, yes, or the syllabus system.
Education is very basic to create a national idea, national spirit. We lack this. And then I think we need to focus a little bit on education. It is impossible by any consideration to develop a country unless you have an excellent educational system. Yes. If you don't have whatever resources you have, will not do. And look at countries like Japan, Singapore, they have very little resources. You cannot compare the natural resources they have there and what we have in Sudan. But they focused on the educational system. They made education a basic priority. And this is directly linked to the question of identity.
Yes.
Through education, you can build the identity and bring people together.
Yeah.
We lack this. At the same time, you cannot develop the country unless you have educational system. Whatever other resources you have, you are not going to succeed if you have a failed educational system, as we now have.
Yes.
I think that is
the education is definitely something very important, because through education you can influence the whole citizens of the country. Once they got well education, directed actually education to the objectives of unity, because we have a diversity in Sudan. We have diversity in everything. Ethnic diversity, we have tribal diversity, we have resources, natural resources, we have diversity. So it's a unique country, actually. It's a pity that... Yes.
Actually, sometimes I feel we need to rediscover Sudan. Even for the educated people, they know very little about many parts of the Sudan. And I confess, when I for the first time went to Darfur, it was a discovery for me. It was a
To see that for.
mind opening. You have to do this very, the closed areas law, which was enacted by the British, prevented people from traveling to the north, to the south.
To the south.
The southerners were prevented to come to the north. There were two educational systems at the time. One for the southerners, administered by the churches, and one for the north, administered by the churches. They were completely two different systems. How can you build a national identity on such basis?
Yes, Charles. This is very, 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 very good. Okay, having heard the ex ambassador, he is also sharing you the same idea that the conflicts, one of the main reasons for our leaders after independence, they did not pay attention to education, to widen the education, to make sure to direct the education and the syllabuses of each the schools to the national issues, so that you can build a unity, or you can build. How can you evaluate, having heard all this, how can you evaluate the progress of Sudan since independence till this moment? Few years of civil rule, governance, more years of military. So how can you evaluate it? What are the reasons why the democracy did not work for 3 times? Actually, after independence, very short time till 1958, when regime of Aboud took power for 6 years. After October Revolution, 1964, a very short less than 5 years of democratic rule, followed by Numerid regime, which stayed in power for 16 years. After that, in 1985, after the revolution, and the interim period, 1 year, in 1986 to only 3 years, followed by the ousted regime, the Inghaz regime, which stayed in power for 30 years. How can you evaluate this? Why? What is it due to conflict? By the way, most of this, Aboud regime resorted to military solution for the south, just military. That regime did not have any other alternative, just fighting to kill all these people. I don't know. So October Revolution, which triggered the killing of Ahmed al-Ghurashi. It was in a rally inside the University of Khartoum barracks, where there was a rally, a debate about the southern Sudan conflict. After that, Numeri took power for 16 years, and the issue of marginalization still, and the South problem still continued on the basis of the military solutions. He had an agreement on 1978 with Joseph Lago, which stayed for 10 years until 1982, but Numeri breached that agreement. Then the South went into war when John Garang in 1983 defected to Ethiopia with a rebellion in his garrison in Bor. So what can you tell us about this heretic democratic rule?
Thank you, Engineer Bakri. This is a very interesting question. I just want to agree with His Excellency Ambassador Osman on the issue of education.
Yes.
Education, and then I will come to your question.
Okay,
Education is the vehicle for building a nation. Why? Because let's define what nation building means. Nation building means a process whereby the government or the state can unify their people under one umbrella, that with a reference of common values that everyone agrees. At the same time, the government is able to extend its authority to every territory within that state. And thirdly, to have international relations that serve their own interests.
Yes.
That is the three pillars of nation building.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the nation building also have strategies. So far there are three strategies of nation building. Strategy of cross-cutting issues. When I was talking at the beginning, I mentioned 4 or 5 issues that face Sudan immediately after independence. All these issues need to be in the strategy of cross-cutting issues. All these issues should be addressed at the same time. Uneven development, education issues, restructuring of institutions, all these should go together.
Yeah.
That is what means by the cross-cutting issues strategy. The other strategy is the strategy of modernization. You look into the traditional aspects in your country, you look into the traditional structures, and you try to modernize it. Instead of having native administration, you introduce some modern civil servant administration. Instead of having customary law as reference, you should promote the national law that can be applied to all the citizens. Instead of dividing the country into urban and rural countries, you can. So you have to bridge that gap. All this should go together. The modernization issue is focusing on this. You should take modernization as a vehicle to change and to build nation. The third strategy is the strategy of ideology. Ideology strategy. Unfortunately, if you look to Sudan, all the governments after independence, whether military or civilian governments, they have applied the ideology of Arabic Islamic ideology in Sudan to build a nation. You mentioned Aboud, that's very interesting. Aboud strategy to bring South into North, or to bring South as one nation with the North, was through Arabization. It is an Arabization policy whereby he confiscated the schools that run by the church and bring it to national curriculum and should be administered from the Ministry of Education here in Khartoum. And he imposed Arabic as a means of instruction in South Sudan without any consultation with anybody. So that's the problem. If you look to South, therefore, Eastern Sudan, the issue of rebellion started earlier. The bigger Congress emerged in 1958, and they were calling for self-administration, just to to participate in to administer their issues and to be part of power in Khartoum, and at the same time to look after their own people there. If you look to Darfur, there is a front they started in 1963, it called Darfur Development Front. Look to the Nuba Mountain in 1960s, also late 1950s, we have the Nuba Mountain Union. All this started as an advocacy groups. It started peacefully, but when they were neglected and ignored, so they continue.
They took arms.
Yeah, they continue to increase their mobilization, and then finally they took arms because they couldn't find any other way for solution of
this is very important, Dr. Zuhair, because I want the ambassador also to elaborate on or to comment on. He raised very important issues about the conflicts which arose in Sudan since immediately after independence. I think you have something to add to what Dr. Zuhair said about this. He said 3. What are the 3? The ideology. The last one was the ideology.
Yeah, ideology strategy, cross-cutting strategy, and modernization strategy. The only strategy that used in Sudan was the ideology strategy.
The only which is the worst.
Yeah, and it was used. Unfortunately, It was used not as a magnitude to build nation. It looks rather as a way of mobilization. And unfortunately, it did more harm than cure.
Divide and rule. It
Yeah.
was. It applied on the
Exactly.
basis of divide and rule, so
Exactly.
that the rulers they can, through the conflict, the continuous conflict, they can.
The elites
continue.
just want to consolidate their power in Khartoum, but they are not interested in building a nation.
Okay.
The problem of failing to handle conflicts in Sudan is related to the basic problem of the failure to build a modern nation, modern state.
Modernization.
Because
yeah.
if you fail in building the state itself on proper basis, how can you handle the problems that will face you in various parts of the country?
Yes.
The political system was very inefficient in Sudan. The main reason for this is that for 57 years of our existence since independence, we were ruled by military regimes.
Yeah.
The problem with the military regime is that they undermine the conditions that are required for democracy and popular participation. The people, there was very limited chance for the people to participate in a real manner in the affairs of the country. Because there always 57 years of military rule
Yes.
is a big problem.
Yeah.
And this prevented the development of the political culture in the country. If you have a low or underdeveloped political culture,
It's a big problem.
It's a big problem. You cannot handle any problem in the right manner. And when the political life, the political activity in the country is usurped by a small group of people whose only way to handle things is by security,
and
outlook,
force, and yes.
it is difficult to allow for the political development of the country and to allow the necessary time for democracy to have deeper roots in the country. That's the problem.
That's a big problem.
We were ruled by military, by democratic regime for less than 10 years.
Only 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay? And in a country like Britain, to create a properly democratic system, they needed more than 200 years.
200 years without
400.
any 400 without any military intervention.
Yes. So that is one of our problems. Now I think the main challenge for us is how to create the conditions that will allow us to have a proper democratic system in the country. The basic condition for this is to have national unity. Unless you have national unity, at the center you will fail, conflicts will continue, and there will be difficult conditions for development.
The vicious circle will come back again.
Yes,
Military,
yes.
after a very short time.
If you failed in democracy, don't be surprised if tomorrow we have another military regime.
coup.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
basic.
Can you add what you can
Yeah,
add?
you asked me a question I didn't answer actually when you said you need me to elaborate on this instability and
Instability.
and
Yeah, but for that,
military.
can you just say again for the second time, because you are specializing in conflict resolution,
Yeah.
the three pillars, you said the modernization, the cross.
Yeah, these are the strategies
Can you elaborate what you cross-cutting or what?
cross-cutting issues. Yeah,
Cross-cutting
strategy.
like what? Because the viewers, they want to know what are, these are the three.
Cross-cutting issues, because as I said, when Sudan was, when independence was declared, Sudan was faced with 4 or 5 issues. Uneven development, the issue of federation or central government, the issue of identity, and the issue of peace and conflict, because in the south, the peace was ongoing in the south. By cross-cutting issues, it means the government should take all these issues together. Shouldn't focus on one and leave the other, because it can't work like that. If you just focus on the issue of peace and conflict and ignore the issue of uneven development, you can resolve the issue with the Southern Sudanese, and then it will
create
erupt, yeah.
another.
You may be in Darfur, in the eastern or in the north. So you have to take all this. Also, the issue of identity cannot be divided. Everyone in the country need to have their share and their say on this issue. So you cannot talk with the South and tell them that you can have federation, you can have your autonomy, without talking to the Darfurians or the Eastern Sudan or the North, because all these people have their identity. They want to participate in this discussion. So by cross-cutting issues means all these issues take it together and don't separate it or
take it as a package.
You take it as a package. That is the meaning of that. The issue of the second one, the strategy of modernization, I think I explained it. Covered by
and the ideology, the
ideology, yeah.
But to my question, what
exactly your question is the simple answer is because the parliamentary system doesn't fit Sudan. That's the simple answer. But why it doesn't fit Sudan? Because the British want to promote a system that they know. And in the same way that they can serve their interest.
Yeah.
By the way, when the colonials leaves, that doesn't mean their interest finished in the country or gone. No, they just maintain their interest by other means. Yeah, not direct means, but indirect means.
And if you see me why I laugh, because I wrote and I still write, and after tomorrow on Sunday I had in an article, I write articles.
Yeah.
I keep saying that parliamentary system is not good for Sudan. It does not suit Sudan. The same what you are saying, because we did not try. We tried this many times and it failed. It didn't work. And always I repeat what Einstein said. Always repeat, insanity, he said, insanity is repeating the same mistakes and expecting different results.
Of course not.
Now we are committing the same mistakes. I agree with you, fully agree with you. The parliamentary system is not suitable for Sudan.
The question, who is repeating the same mistake? It is the elites in the center.
The
it is
elites
not,
in the center.
Yeah. So the preference have to be.
You have to.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. They have to be given their voice here, and they have to be part of this process. Otherwise, we will continue
this vicious circle.
Yeah.
Okay, actual time went very fast now. They told me that we have few minutes, so I want this few minutes reserved to the Excellency Ambassador, because I have a question, very important question about the foreign policies of the Sudan since independence. Foreign policies are erratic, not sustained. Definitely, there is a big problem in the foreign policies till this moment. Many cases, the rulers are ambivalent in different views and different countries. That's why Sudan was, in the last 30 years of their salvation, was isolated. Actually, can you tell us in a few minutes about the foreign policies? Do you think foreign policies since independence were uniform and conforming to what?
It is impossible to separate foreign policy and foreign relations from the internal situation of the country.
Yeah.
If you have failure inside the country, it's difficult to achieve success in your external relations.
It's the same. It will be reflected.
This is a basic question, and if you have the kind of political regimes, the military regimes in Sudan, the existence of a military regime immediately leads to isolation in the international regime. That is because, first of all, many countries, as a matter of principle, oppose military regimes.
Yeah.
International organizations, starting with the United Nations, always have a problem with the political regime. The African Union has very clear-cut stipulations regarding the illegality of military regimes. So if you have a problem inside the country, you will face isolation outside the country. You will not be able to conduct a successful military foreign policy. And this is...
We'll end up like this. Okay, thank you very much, dear gentlemen. This is a very important episode about the independence and the aftermath of the independence and the failures and the conflicts which took place which crippled Sudan till now. Thank you very much for being with me in this 1 hour. Thank you, dear viewers, for being with us in the last 50 minutes. We hope to see you next week on different issue that concerns and important to Sudan, hoping that the new year 2021 will be something totally different than 2020. Thank you. Bye. See you later.